attendance.
You might have to change it.
All right. Hey, good evening. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Can you hear me? Everybody's
Yes,
good?
we can.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Boy, I can't see
Good.
my pictures. I don't know if anybody sees me.
It is. I think we can hear you, but we can't see you.
I unblock I put my camera on.
You may have to slide the camera. Sometimes you have. Are you on a laptop?
She's muted now. I can't hear her. That's okay.
Yes, I am on the laptop, but I can't.
Yes, sometimes they have something that you slide to cover the camera.
It's okay for attendance. I know you're here, so don't worry about it.
She is.
Thank you.
The light has dawned. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be introduced by Joyce. She is a colleague of mine. Usually she's right through that wall over there in my office. My name's Tim Trott. I'm one of the biology professors at Southern Adventist University. And Carol asked me to come present to you fine folks about some of the techniques and ideas that we've come up with to talk to kids about nature. So I'd like to share my screen with you and show some PowerPoint and some videos and a bunch of different things as we go through today. So prayers lifted. Thank you, Joyce, that the internet connection works and that you can all see all this stuff that we've got prepared for you. So let me take a second and just start sharing my screen with you, and hopefully that will work just fine. So if I do that, I want to do that, and I want to do that. Oh, bam. Password. What? Okay, hold on a second. All right. Can you see my screen now? You should be seeing, hopefully, a PowerPoint presentation. Is that working? Yes.
Yes.
All right, good. So I want to talk to you about one of the major techniques that I use when I'm teaching, and this applies to just about anything, and it definitely applies to teaching, younger kids or older kids. I find that it works all the time. And I want to talk about, hooking kids. And when I am talking about that, I mean how to get their attention and how to get them to remember and sort of get invested in the information you're sharing. And so that's really where we're going today. How especially with science, that can be a challenge. How do you get kids interested in things that are often technical or often complicated and difficult, but I think at the same time very, very exciting and just wondrous. And so we're going to try to figure out how to draw kids into the material and how to present it in a way that allows that to happen. So that's really where we're headed with this. Just to tell you a little bit about me, and so you know where I'm coming from. I'm the ugly one on the right, and that's my beautiful family. I am a cell biologist, a cell molecular biologist, so I'm interested in the nitty gritty of how the world works. I like the little details. I like understanding the mechanics of how our bodies and other living things in nature are put together. I've been very privileged to be able to teach here at Southern for a while. Teaching has been sort of my goal throughout my career. Been here at Southern for what? I think this is my 11th year. I taught somewhere else before I was here. And so it's been a lot of fun. I teach college kids, so a little bit different than most of the Sabbath schools that I think we're talking about today. But I've found throughout my career, and my wife, who is also pictured there, she's in the black shirt. She has taught all age groups, and we talk together about teaching and stuff, and it's all the same. It really is. Teaching college kids, teaching kindergartners, teaching master's students, all the same silly stuff works, because we all like to learn. We like to have our attention grabbed by things. We like to be able to link things together in different ways. And so all of that is really important. So that's what we're really headed. I'm really a plant biologist. I'm not going to bore you with plants, but plants are close to my heart. I teach genetics here. I like, again, the nitty gritty stuff. We take students to conferences and do all kinds of fancy stuff, and we're not going to talk about any of that today, but just to give you an idea where I'm coming from. So this is really the thrust of what I want to do, and I'm going to show you some examples of this. This idea of memory hooks. And by a memory hook can be almost anything. It can be just something that you do to link a piece of information with something, right? And that something can be just about anything. It can be a physical movement. It can be a sound. It can be a prop. It can be a song. It can be a silly action or anything, right? Link it to something. If the students then have this bit of information that they've never heard before, but they can link it to something they know or something that's easy to remember, then they can hang that piece up and say, that's easy. I can remember this, right? And so that's really where we're going today. And I'd like you to think about how you can use these kind of hooks in your presentations. And I'm going to give you some examples. I'd like to talk about some of that stuff. Let me talk about some of these examples. They can be visual. I like to use visual props in my classroom. I think they're really, really great, especially like for all kids, little kids, big kids, doesn't matter, adults, everybody likes to look at things, right? These can be actual animals. You see this picture here of me holding a bird. That's actually not a real bird. Does anybody know what kind of bird that is, by the way? Nope. Nobody knows. Nobody can hear me. Hold on a second. You guys?
I was going to say, it looks like a pigeon or a dove there.
There's someone I can hear you now. Hold on, I'm trying to get my chat open again. Let's see. It's not a pigeon. It's actually a mockingbird. It's supposed to be a mockingbird. One of the little nature presentations I did over the last couple of years was on birds. And I used, you ever seen those little stuffed birds that you squeeze them and they sing the song that they have? I used those. Why did I use those? Because I had them and it was a prop and it allowed the students to link to what I was talking about. And they were silly. Silly's good. You could use whatever you have. Do you have a shell collection? Do you have models? Do you have just a tape measure and you can show how big things are? One of my lessons talked about, and I'm actually going to show you a video clip of that, about how one of the smallest animals is this little bat. And so I brought out a cotton ball, and that demonstrated how big that is. Students can link that. Everybody knows what a cotton ball is, right? Or, hey, it weighs about as much as a dime. Go home and find a dime and hold that in your hand. Oh yeah, I know what a dime feels like. I can link that to that. So visual, sort of physical or visual props are really, really good. Even just like silly motions in your class. I teach genetics here, which is not, nature as much as we think about nature, but it's the basis of how all life is put together. It's really, really awesome. There are some really difficult concepts in there. And there's one in particular that during the whole semester, I link a particular weird motion. I actually stand up and do this weird kicking thing, and I make this sound every time that particular thing happens in our cells. Whenever it comes up 4 or 5 times during the semester. After the first time I do that, and I do it several times during class, I over and over, repeat it over and over. Students then, after I do that, all I have to do is say, hey, guess what happens? And I make this weird kicking motion. And they're like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I remember that whole other lecture that we did right before. And it's all good. So those sort of physical movements, things that you repeat over and over to tie concepts together, are hooks, right? You're grabbing their attention. You're allowing them to hang that piece of information on something else other than just like, oh, I got all this stuff. I don't know what to do with it in my mind, right? For me, the second one on there, auditory hooks, they work really well. I can remember lyrics to songs. It's just me. I don't know if that works for you too, but for me, if you give me a song, I can remember it. Pardon me. When I was in 5th grade, my wonderful teacher, Mrs. Eleanor Brown, If any of you know Eleanor Brown, she taught me 5th grade. She made memory verse songs every week for our memory verses. I can still sing you those memory verse songs. They just stick in my head. So if you can put things to non-verbal sounds or songs, those work really, really well. My wife the other day, she was trying to teach a math lesson, and she came up, we were looking on the internet, like, how can we help these students remember the formula for circumference? And we found this silly song on YouTube. I heard it twice. I can still sing it to you. Circumference is pi times diameter, pi times diameter, pi times diameter. Circumference is pi times diameter, and the area is pi r squared. You know, it's just stuff like that sticks in people's heads. So if you can come up with some sort of singing thing or rapping, there was a professor here in chemistry who used to make chemistry raps. I kid you not. They were terrible, absolutely horrendous. That's what made them work.
I'm sorry, Tim. I can give you my little experience. I teach 1st grade, and to plug the rules and the routine and the obedience factor in those little my, it's very hard. So something come in my head. The song in our book that say trust and obey, for there's no other way. I took that tune and changed it. I say, learn and obey, for there's no other way to be happy with Miss Cole, but to learn and obey. That's why if you don't obey, you won't make me happy. You won't go to the treasure chest.
I love it.
That's my little experience with that when you say
I love it. See, they'll remember those things, right?
And then they're singing too.
Right.
Yeah.
Sing it with them, absolutely.
I'm teaching in a public school. I could not teach them the real version of trust and obey and sing it to their parents. That would
Maybe.
be a good witnessing. But I teach in the public school.
Well, you can still use the song, just you have to change the words, I guess. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Like I was saying, my colleague made these chemistry raps and they were terrible, but the students remembered them. And part of the reason they remembered them is because they were terrible. Honestly, the stranger and the sillier, those ones tend to grab students sometimes as well. I was trying to teach in one of the nature lessons I did this past year and a half about gastropods, right? Gastropods are snails. And that's kind of a hard word to remember. So I started saying it in a funny way. Whenever I said it, I'd say gastropods, right? And I'd say, hey, we're going to talk about some more snails today. You mean gastropods? Yeah. And I had kids coming up to me in church for weeks after that, and they just walk by me and go, gastropod. I was like, yeah, I love it. You remembered, right? If I just say gastropod and just keep going, they wouldn't know what that was. But if you say it, gastropod, then they remember, right? So that's a hook. It's a non just verbal. We're making a weird sound, right? They're allowing the students to hook that in their memory because we remember silly stuff. We remember sounds. We remember songs. We remember visual stimulation. And so if you can just put those things together, it makes wonderful help. The last two things on here, and this depends on how long of a lesson you're going to do. If it's only like under 10 minutes or so, depending on the kids, I'd say you'd be fine. But pardon me, one of my favorite things to do is use something called an intermittent pause. This is like a real, educational method. Pardon me. I'm putting my cough drop in my mouth. I do this in my classes all the time. If I'm teaching more than about 10 or 15 minutes, or if I see the student's eyes just kind of like, oh dear, this is getting boring, I stop. And what do? I just talk about something else. Whatever it is. I tell them about my cat, or what happened at what I eat for lunch, or just whatever silly thing I can do. Generally, these days, I tell them stories about my son. I have a 12-year-old son who is incredibly active and likes to get hurt. Not likes, but he gets hurt a lot. and does a lot of silly stuff. So I tell them stories about my son. I say, you want to hear a Caleb story? And they do. And it gives them a second to sort of let go. They get their attention back, and then we keep going. So another sort of nice learning thing, especially when you're talking about complicated material or nature or science stuff that's maybe a lot of detail. Just take a break. Just keep going, talk to them, just say something silly. Generally, the sillier the better. Now that works for me. That may not always work for you. And part of this is you have to figure out what works best for you. One of the things I like to do a lot is to use examples or physical demonstrations. Here's a picture of a nature lesson I did on reptiles. This is my daughter over here. She was helping me. I had an alligator skull. Now you probably don't have a crocodile skull that you have access to. Maybe you do. We happen to have one in the department. So we were talking about how big a Nile crocodile was. This Nile crocodile is about 20 feet long. It's hard for students to understand what 20 feet looks like. So I brought a tape measure. And my daughter stood there and we measured out 20 feet. And we talked about how big that was, how it would probably be, 4 or 5 students laying down, depending on the age, and how that would work. But examples in everything. Talk about a concept and then give them an example using something else. That's a hook, right? That's an educational technique to get them linked into that particular concept. So I want to show you a video of one of these little nature things that I did during COVID. The Collegedale Church here in Collegedale, Tennessee, shut down like most other churches, and we produced a series of little nature nugget stuff, and they were on different topics every week, and we talked about different classes of animals. And the idea was to encourage students to be excited about nature, to understand the wonder and excitement that nature could bring, and also just get them outside, right? And tell them to see some neat stuff. So I'm going to take a second and I want to try to play this video. Lord, please help the audio to work on this video. So we'll see if we can get this to go. Can you still see my screen? All right, let's see if it's going to work now.
All right, hey, welcome back, boys and girls and families. Happy Sabbath. It's so good to see you again. It's a beautiful day here in Collegedale, Tennessee. I hope that you've had the opportunity to get out and enjoy God's creation in lots of different ways. I hope that you've seen some of the animals we've talked about over the last few weeks. You remember a couple weeks ago on our first Nature Nugget, we talked about gastropods and how cool all the different types of snails were. And I even told you could go outside and see some. I hope that you got a chance to find some gastropods. I've heard from a few of you who've sent me texts and told me about the gastropods you found, or some you might even have at your home. And then the week after that, we talked about reptiles. And we talked about all kinds of really neat reptiles, and I showed you the great big alligator jaws. Maybe you've even gotten outside and found some reptiles. Just this week, I found some really, really great reptiles. I was really excited about it. My brother caught a eastern fence lizard. It was really, really cool. It's a lizard about this long. It's all scaly and brown and really, really neat. And its belly's all blue and shiny. It was really, really pretty. You also might see around your house some of the skinks that we have around, the blue-tailed skinks. Those are really common this time of year, running around. This week, I wished I could have brought it in, but I told you should leave turtles alone when you find them. I was walking on the biology trails and found a box turtle about this big. It was so cute. It was just sitting right in the trail. So we moved it and just took it off the trail and put it so it could go its way and not be lost from its territory. I want to thank you for all of you who sent text messages to my wife. We talked about alligators and I showed you how big a crocodile could get. Those text messages really helped because I was able to get my own alligator. You see? Look how big he is. He's really big. No, it's not a real alligator, but this is the best Mrs. Trott would let me have at home. But this is a pretty good size alligator, but certainly not 20 feet like we talked about last time. All right, so this week I want to talk to you about a third group of animals that are all around us. We see them all the time. They're really, really common, and we interact with a lot of them on an everyday basis. Those are the mammals. And in fact, boys and girls, you are a mammal, right? Humans are one type of mammal, and there's lots of other types of mammals around. Mammals have some features in common. Mammals are distinguished from other organisms by the presence of hair or fur on some parts of their body. They don't always have it everywhere, but they have it somewhere on their bodies. They feed their babies with milk. That's a characteristic of mammals. They also have really big brains. They have a fancy kind of brain called a neocortex, which just means they're very intelligent usually, and have social structures and can do all kinds of really neat things. And one of the last kind of odd things about mammals is they have 3 bones in their middle ears. So if you think about how you hear, there's actually 3 little tiny bones in your ears that allow you to hear, and all mammals have that kind of ear structure. And in fact, most mammals have a really fancy communication with other types of mammals. So they either make noise or they can hear really well, and it's one of the ways they communicate. So I want to tell you about some of the really, really amazing mammals that are on our planet. Actually, the largest animal to ever live on planet Earth, larger in fact than any of the known dinosaurs, is still alive today and is a mammal. Oh, it's crazy. So the blue whale lives today in the oceans of the world, swims all over it, all of the oceans of the world, and can live to be over 100 feet long. Now, if you remember, a couple weeks ago, I showed you what a 20-foot crocodile would look like. It was really big. A blue whale is 5 times that big. It wouldn't even fit inside the church. It's really, really big. Now, we're outside here. We're not filming in the church today due to all the craziness that's going on. But that's a really big animal. It can dive really deep in the ocean. And when it dives down deep in the ocean, its heart can slow down to only 5 beats a minute or less. So you think about that. Your heart beats about 60 times a minute. It goes dong 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 dong, or maybe faster if you're exercising. A whale's heart can slow down so it beats once and then doesn't beat again for 20 seconds or maybe 10 seconds. That's a long time, right? Between beats. So that's one of the grandest mammals on the planet. In fact, the largest animal that ever lived. Mammals also make us up some of the really small animals on the planet. You might think about some other mammals, like giraffes or elephants or mice or rabbits. Those are all mammals, right? They're all furry. But there's some other really, really tiny ones. In fact, the smallest mammal on the planet is actually smaller than this. This is a cotton ball. And this cotton ball is about 1 inch long. It's a little bit, about 1 inch round, actually. If you were to take your finger and put it right between your eyes, and then put your finger on the tip of your nose, and then look at that, it's probably be about 1 inch. And one of the smallest mammals is something called a Bumble Bee Bat. And that Bumble Bee Bat is only 1 inch long. You think, well, how much does a Bumble Bee Bat weigh? Well, I want you to go in your house after we're done and find a dime. Ask your parents for a dime. I have a dime here in my pocket. That's a dime. This is an old dirty dime, but it's still a dime. That weighs about 2 grams. That's the weight of a bumblebee bat. It's almost like nothing. You can barely even feel it. So bumblebee bat about 1 inch long and weighs about a dime. Another mammal that's about the same size is called the Etruscan shrew. Also weighs about 2 grams. Its heart can beat 25 times a second. That's crazy. So wait, the big blue whale we talked about has a heart that beats about 5 times a minute. And the Etruscan shrew, which weighs just 2 grams, the size of a dime, has a heart that beats 25 times a second. That's really hard to imagine. So I want you to do something with your parents. I want you to say, hey, Dad, Mom, look, my heart's beating 25 times a second, and go like that. And that's about the speed of what the Etruscan shrew's heart would beat at. That's really fast. Versus your heart, go, 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 go. Or the big whale's heart, boom, 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 right? So there's a lot of variation. God's made some amazing creatures from the really, really big to the really, really small. In fact, you probably have some mammals at home. Many of our favorite pets are mammals. I have a cat and a dog with my mammal children here at home, and so we thought we'd bring one of those in. My dog, who is being a little hesitant to come on camera, he's shy, say, Lily, come here. Lily, come here. She's not coming. Lily is a mammal, and she's about 8 years old, and she has fur, and she would feed her babies with milk. and she has a great big brain, right? And she is very, very smart, right, Lily? And she has 3 middle ear bones, so she can hear really, really well. And she makes vocalizations. She probably won't do it right now, but she can bark and make all kinds of funny noises. I was going to show you my cat. My cat's name is Tiger, but we couldn't find him today. We looked for him. So anyways, I want you to enjoy the mammals around you this week, and maybe send my wife some texts and show us pictures of your mammals. Maybe send them to Pastor Carol as well, and we can look at them this week and enjoy all the wonderful things God has created. We'll see.
All right. So that was one just example of how you might do a short nature lesson. And I hope that while you watch that, you picked up maybe some of the things that I was doing as hooks, using examples of physical demonstrations or silly movements or weird sounds. There was several of those in there. I don't know if it came through on the video of your computer, but when I did the thing, something about the shutter speed of my camera I was using made my lips move really funny. I don't know if you could tell it on there, but it looked pretty weird in live video. But so a couple of the things I would want to encourage you to do in teaching nature to kids is be predictable. If you're going to have, some sort of repeating format where you're going to do this over and over again, have a style, have something that you do, like I say, a familiar format. I don't know if you know who this guy is. This is David Attenborough. He's like the grandfather of nature video. He wore essentially the same outfit in every nature movie that he ever made over 30 years. Essentially a blue shirt with khaki trousers. And that was just his thing. Wherever he went, it was blue shirt and khaki trousers. It also made editing video of him together very easily because you could edit videos that were taken all over the world and he was always wearing the same clothes. I don't know if you looked at my shirt and noticed all the pictures I've shown you of myself today. They're all in this shirt. This is my David Attenborough shirt. And so when and my wife makes fun of me, often when I do nature nuggets or little nature presentations, I'll wear this shirt. And honestly, there are kids who have picked up on it. They're like, hey, Dr. Trott, you're wearing your nature shirt today. Are you going to do a presentation? I'm like, yep. I'm coming to talk to you. Finally, the other thing is, keep it simple. Don't try to do too much, stay on a single topic and generally, keep it as short and to the point as you can. Going on and on and on and on, decide what it is you actually want to talk about and talk about that. Have a plan, right? With a familiar format, be predictable, keep it short. One of the last pieces here that I often think is challenging when you go to teach about science or nature is, how do I find information? And for me, it's actually pretty easy. I don't think you need fancy resources or a bunch of education or, you don't have to be a cell biologist to do these things. Honestly, I'm a cell biologist. I'm not a mammal biologist. I'm not a reptile biologist. I like those things and I'm excited about them, but I've never been formally trained in that. People walk around with me outside and they're like, oh, you're a biologist. What kind of plant is that? I don't know. I can tell you how photosynthesis works, but I don't know what that is. But for me, it's pretty easy to find this stuff. The internet's a wonderful place, And so I would say you don't need fancy resources. Just Google. I would Google mammal facts for kids, right? Because that helps you find the right level of information. That's honestly how I prepared for these things. I would just Google, gastropods for kids, gastropod facts for kids. So the for kids search actually is a real thing. I would write down a list of 10 things, interesting facts, just from those pages, write them down. I'd have a piece of notes, list of interesting facts, and then I would just talk about them. I would decide, these are the important 3 or 4 things that I actually want to talk about. And then put together, well, how can I hook them, right? I want to talk about the heart and how different mammals have different speeds of hearts. Well, let's talk about, your heart doing this, right? And how often that happens. Let's talk about a whale heart, right? Right? There's audio, there's visual, right? It's a sound that's weird. They'll remember. Or the these kids would love to go home and I'm in a Etruscan shrew. And your parents are like, how did you learn that word? Well, I don't know. Dr. Trott was talking about doing this weird thing with his lips and it made me remember the word. That's what this hooking idea is about. And it seems like maybe you're putting on a show, but it's for a real purpose, right? Yes, it is a bit of a dog and pony show, but it's with a purpose. It's not just entertainment. It's trying to hook stimuli to pieces of information that the students can remember. All right, I want to show you another one. Why not? I got another good one. This was one of my favorite ones. So I want to show you another one, and then we'll have a chance to ask some questions and talk about a couple things. So let me just switch gears here again and hit this one, and we'll play this one. All right, everybody still hear me? Everybody's good? Haven't lost you yet? I could tell a silly story about Caleb, and we could take an intermittent pause. And I mean, this wasn't a Caleb story, but just yesterday I had a student in my house who fell down on his skateboard and scraped his whole side of his body up, and it was awful. So we were doctoring him up in my house yesterday. I mean, those kind of things happen, but it wasn't a Caleb story. All right, but it was pretty close. All right, let's play one more of these, and then I have a final couple points to make.
Hey, good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to another Nature Nugget. I hope that you've had a great week, and I hope that you've been able to go outside and find some wonderful mammals in the world around you. If you remember last time we talked about mammals, and I showed you my big dog, Lily, and we talked about the great big whale and its great big heart, and we talked about the little tiny bats and their little tiny hearts that go really, really fast. Well, hopefully you got outside and got to see one of those. This week, I got to see a really neat mammal in my yard. One we don't get to see very often, but we see every year from time to time. We saw a fox running through our yard. It was actually over in the neighbor's yard and came and kind of walked around the neighborhood. So it was really great to see one of the neat mammals that the Lord has made for us. I want to tell you about another group of animals today, one that you probably don't see very often, but one that is so different from many of the other animals that we know and see on a day-to-day basis that they're just really weird. And that's one of the wonderful things about God's creation is all the diversity that He's created for us. Now, the first time we did a Nature Nugget, we talked about the gastropods. And I showed you snails and slugs and lots of different shapes and sizes of gastropods. I told you that gastropod meant stomach foot. And that's sort of a way you can think about what a snail is. I want to talk to you about a related group of organisms that are also in this big family called mollusks. And these animals I want to talk about today are called the cephalopods. The cephalopods! The cephalopods, right, means head, foot. Cephalo means head, and pod talks about feet. There are 4 major types of cephalopods, and you've probably heard of a couple of them, but the others you haven't. You've probably heard of an octopus. That's the major one. So that's number 1. You've probably heard about squid. Squid and octopus are both cephalopods. Okay? There are 2 others, though, that you might not have heard of. There's what's called a nautilus. A chambered nautilus is kind of weird. And the other one is a cuttlefish. Cuttlefish are actually my personal favorite. They're, small, there's different sizes of them, but they have this really neat, amazing abilities we'll talk about later on. So what I want to do is I want to talk to you about a few of the amazing things that cephalopods can do in some of the neat ways God has created them. I actually sort of brought one with me today. So my assistant's going to bring it to me. This is not a real octopus. I really wish it was a real octopus. And, we've talked about other animals I'd like to have, but this one I'd really like to have, but they're kind of hard to keep. So this is an octopus. This is a good size octopus, actually. They come in lots of different sizes. One of the characteristic things about octopus that you might think about is 8 legs, and that's really octopus. The octo means 8. And they have 8 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And they have this main part here, which is sort of the head. It's called the mantle. And then they have lots and lots of legs, arms, tentacles. Octopus have some amazing things about them. If you remember last time we talked about the great big whale heart, you know, and we talked about the heart of the little bees. Well, the octopus actually has 3 hearts. Mammals like you and I and your dog and the cat and the fox that I saw this week only have 1. Cephalopods like the octopus have 3. They actually have 2 hearts that pump blood to their gills, and then they have another heart that takes the blood from the gills and pumps it out to the rest of their body. So they actually have a 3-heart circulatory system, which is really, really different than yours and ours, and it's amazing. And the blood that they pump through their bodies is not red, but it's blue. It has a completely different chemistry and allows them to live in the oceans in places where you and I can't. So one of the other neat things about cephalopods, and particularly an octopus, is that you and I have 1 brain in our cranium up here in our head. Something like this octopus actually has 9 brains. Woohoo! What? 9 brains? Yeah, it has 1 main brain, sort of in its head, right? In the main part of its body, has 1 main brain, and then each of its 8 arms or tentacles has its own little sort of mini brain, and those mini brains coordinate with the main brain and work to make the whole animal move and swim around. It's really weird. 3 hearts and 9 brains. What? That's just crazy. Couple other really neat things about cephalopods. You may have known that they can squirt out ink. They have this neat defense mechanism, and when they jet away from a predator, they can squirt out a cloud of ink, and it helps them hide and sort of confuse their predators. That's really neat. They have a really neat way of moving called their locomotion, and it's difficult to see on our little stuffed animal here, but right here on the side and well, there's one on this side. I don't know where the other one is on the other side. There should be another one over here. Is a little water jet outlet. And squid and an octopus actually can move faster than most fish, but yet they don't have any fins. Where are their fins? They just have these crazy little arm things. They can crawl around on the bottom with their little arms, but that's not very fast. But when they want to, they can suck water in to their bodies and they can squirt it out like water jets out the sides, kind of like a jet ski out the sides of their bodies, and they can actually accelerate and propel themselves faster than most fish, which makes them very apt predators of crabs and small other fish and marine life. All right, the last thing about cephalopods that I want to talk to you about has to do with the color. Now this one is orange. I have another one here, another little sort of, this is a puppet. This one is kind of green. These are actually both reasonable colors for an octopus. The skin that you and I have, that God gave us, it's pretty much sort of one color, right? Sort of a light pinky skin, and other people have different colors of skin. That's one of the really wonderful things about humans is all the different shades that we come in. But I'm just this color, and I really can't change my color. I can go out in the sun and I can turn red. I don't tan, I just turn red, but that's different. What an octopus can do is they have special sacs in their skin called chromatophores, and that's really a fancy word for just sac of color, right? They have these little tiny spots of color in their skin, and they have muscles that control them. They can actually make them bigger or smaller. They have several different colors of these chromatophores or sacs of color in their skin, and allows them to change color from sort of an orangish to a pinkish red or white if they kind of contract them all, or a bluish green, or even a black or purple color that's possible with those chromatophores. And they can often change it very, very quickly. So their skin is just amazing. It allows them to camouflage themselves and hide from predators, or just to hide to ambush their prey, which is really neat. The last thing about their skin that's really amazing, and I want you to ask your mom and dad to help you use the internet to find some videos on octopus camouflage, because there are some really fascinating examples of this. But not only can octopus change the color of their skin, but they can actually change its texture and shape. So they can go from really, really smooth to really, really bumpy really fast. So they can swim along the bottom and settle down on the sand and change the color to look just like the sand, to be smooth and flat like the sand. And then they could swim over to a big, like coral head or something, and they could sit down on the coral head, and very quickly they'll change their color to match the coral head, and their skin will become the texture of the coral head, and they'll just blend in perfectly. It's absolutely phenomenal. So octopus, or cephalopods, are a group of animals that are very, very different from mammals or you and I, but yet God has made them in some amazing ways. So I hope that you learned something new today, and I hope that you get out again this week and get a chance to look at some of the amazing plants and animals that our God has made for us. Have a great week.
Right. Crazy stuff. 3 hearts and 9 brains. I think cephalopods are really, really cool. It's fun to be able to talk about them. So what about you? How do you use this stuff? How do you incorporate this into your own nature lessons or teaching science to kids? I would say use the methods or some of these ideas that you're most comfortable with. You can't do all of them, right? Which ones are best for you? Maybe making songs is best for you. Maybe it's, examples and demonstrations. Maybe it's silly examples or whatever. Maybe it's physical movements. Whatever that is, figure out what that is, what you're most comfortable doing, and do that. You can't do all of them, right? Please don't try to do all of the hooks at once. Then it will just be about the hooks and it won't be about the animals. But that's really the trick to, developing as a teacher, is figuring out your style, what works for you, what kind of hooks you can use to grab your students. And then finally, whenever you're doing this, I find that if you're excited about it, your students will catch on to that. If you're teaching a science lesson and you're just like, well, man, I think there's this and there's this, and I can't remember about something else, they're not going to be interested in that. Yes, it is a little bit of a show, but you do that in a way that shows that you're excited about it, and you can instill this sense of wonder in nature and God's creation and the scientific stuff around us. That's just really neat. Encourage kids to explore and go outside. Also, don't be afraid to actually give them details, real examples, numbers, terminology, right? Cephalopods, right? Or gastropods, or use, the scientific names of things, but help them understand them, hook them with it, right? In a way that you can capture their imagination and really get them excited about it. So that's who I am as a teacher. That's the way I teach. And so that's what I've been trying to convey to you guys, is these are the interesting things that I try to do and convey the excitement that I have for the natural world to my students. So I hope that has helped at least a little bit. I believe we have a few minutes left for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so that I can see you all again, because this has been consuming my screen. So now I'm kind of back to you. And I guess we have a few minutes we can chat and see if you guys have any comments or maybe stories of how you've used some of these hooks in your own experience.
Yes, Tim. I really enjoyed your presentation. It was very fascinating to me as a first grade teacher. Do you have your PowerPoint available by any chance? Is it on the Google Drive?
I intend to put it on the Google Drive. I tried today and I could not get access to it right. And then it was also too big to email. So I will make sure that it ends up there sometime today. I'm no problem at all. I intended to share that with you. And the links to those 2 nature nuggets that I did are there. And you're welcome to look at whatever you want with those. It's fine. Also, if you have questions or anything, feel free to email me. That would be great.
What is your email address?
I probably should say that, huh?
So where do we
my
find
email
it?
is just my name, Tim Trott, TimTrott at southern.edu. I don't know. Let's see if I can I could put that in the chat.
At southern.edu.
Yeah, I just put it in the chat to everybody in this room. I hope that wasn't everybody in all of this convention, but
Only the ones that are in this breakout room.
oh, good. Thank you, Joyce.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Cole. Are most of the rest of you school teachers or Sabbath school leaders, or what do we have here?
Brand new.
All of the above.
All of the above, yeah. Both at once.
Yeah, I'm brand new to this. I wonder what the best way to get started would be. Just like what to kind of plan for, or figure out your style. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, with the videos I showed you, we did a series about 8 or 9 of those. And to be honest, the style kind of evolved during them. I had a little bit of a plan with the shirt and, kind of the length of time and things like that. But that kind of evolved. But if you can have, a little bit of an idea of where you want to go, a length of time, I would suggest keeping it short. You go more than 7 or 8 minutes with one of these, in a Sabbath school presentation or something, and it's going to be tricky. Then you're going to need some pauses or some activities or something, to help with keep them engaged.
And don't be afraid to experiment with things. Try different things.
Absolutely.
Of course, part of it depends on the exact age of the children, but
I've done some nature presentations that I think were pretty bad. I tried some stuff and it didn't work. And that's okay. We're learning too.
Especially during COVID time with that Zoom classroom, it's a good thing to send them in the backyard and look for dirty things.
Yeah, get
Look for
outside.
animals.
Get away from your screen and go find something. In most of these, and this was again a year or so ago during COVID when we did a lot of these, I would encourage the students to text or email me. And most of the students who we were showing these to had my contact information or my wife's contact information. My wife teaches at the school, so they know who she is. And so we would get a lot of interesting pictures during the week, which was a lot of fun.
I'm
I have
just
a
noticing.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, in conjunction with, like teaching about science and nature, are there any science experiments that you could maybe recommend? I know like my kids in my Sabbath school class are always, interested in those kind of things, but I don't quite know where to research them. So
Yeah, again, I think a lot of just the 4 kids kind of searches, on Google. There's a lot of that stuff. Honestly, the Sabbath School Quarterly occasionally has some things. If you're teaching out of any of the younger science curriculum books for the schools, there are experiments in there. I know I helped my wife with a lot of those, and they're actually pretty good. But absolutely, hands-on stuff and getting this kids doing. I know it's hard and it's a lot of work and it takes setup, but it's so much more interesting to the kids and beneficial. Talking about science isn't really fun. It's much more fun to do it. And, so, I would really strongly encourage, like sort of activities or lab sort of stuff. But I would just search simple stuff. Don't, you're not a research lab. You're not curing cancer, just simple stuff. Simple lab experiments for kids, right? And there's tons of resources out there on teacher websites. I know because I help my wife find them all the time.
I would suggest to go on Pinterest.
My wife is a Pinterest maniac. Yeah.
And look for the freebies. They have
okay.
freebies. Yeah, because if you look for the pay one, you will go broke.
Yeah. Another good website that I know that my wife uses in her classroom, she teaches 7th grade, but she occasionally will buy stuff off of Teacher Pay Teachers.
Yes.
Those are cheap. They're like $10 or something for usually a whole packet full of stuff.
Right.
And those are usually pretty good.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw the chat, Tim. You had asked some of them what their positions are. We have a Sabbath school teacher, adventure director, preschool teacher, and professional engineer.
Professional engineer. I love it.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure most of us are wearing multiple hats, right? Your preschool teacher and your Sabbath school and whatever else, and that's okay.
Teaching 7 days a week, 24 a day, 24 hours.
I understand.
Yeah, but we love it. It's a ministry and a profession at the same time.
It's a real blessing. I know teaching is exhausting. I've been teaching most of my career, and my wife teaches as well, and my parents taught. Seen that from a lot of different angles, but it's very rewarding. Teaching kids
There's
is a lot of fun.
just Mike, there's a company. I was teaching butterfly to first graders, and then they send you a kit of the habitat where they stay, and then we have to send. They send you in the mail. You have to send for it. You have to ask them. We ask them for the specimen, the pod, the one that grow, and
Right.
then you put them in your corner in your classroom, your science center, and then every day the kids feed them, feed the larva, the pod, and then they saw it growing. And one day they came from after a weekend, they saw the cocoon, the hard thing. And
Yeah.
after that, they came back another weekend, they saw the butterfly is flying in that little cage. And then in the spring, after feeding them so much, and then in the spring, we have a party. You say, we're going to let them go to nature. Oh my goodness.
I bet they love that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yes.
But see, that's the thing. Actually doing, I mean, I want to really encourage you to do stuff with your kids.
What about
Just talk.
what about if you do plants?
Plants?
Is it
Plant
yes,
also, yeah.
Yeah.
plants, like if you could grow a bean or a
Beans are
corn
so
or-
easy to grow. You can grow beans on wet paper towels. I mean, you know.
That's cool.
Yes.
And bring it over and let them water it, let them nurture it,
Absolutely.
let them.
And then you can do science with that, right? So you grow the beans, right? And then they grow the beans. And then the next time you grow the beans and you water them with juice or milk, or I don't know, change something, change the temperature, change what you water them with, and then see how it's different, right? And you can teach the scientific method that way, and inquiry and experimentation with just really simple stuff. You don't need anything fancy. So.
And
Hi, Carol.
one thing we they have been teaching us for professional development is the project base, and then the kids they go in their own garden in their backyard or in the school, so they have train them to do their own garden, different fruits and vegetable. And then when they harvest, they can take it home and let mommy cook the beans or that veggies
That's great.
or the community, something. It's
And
like science/community stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you could do with that. You're right. I mean, you can do community, you can do health, you can do nutrition, you can do science and soil science, and talk about plant and botany. I mean, just any little piece of that can be used, and talk about it in each different day. Really great
We
stuff.
can do that in Pathfinders, in Adventurers. They can do project like this.
Simple stuff. Like I said in one of my last slides, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be super fancy. You don't have to try to cure cancer. This is just, you have to understand what it is you're trying to teach. This is the point I want them to get, and just figure out the simplest way of doing that.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a question. In the for the class, they have the little videos where you could show the story for the kids. So do you do that? Let's say if we wanted to say, okay, this is nature time, and then we put it on what you're doing, and you having a like what you just did with the alligator, with the bird, and we're like, okay, this is what's going on. Can you look at it? Is it something we could use too from time to time for them to see other people, other people doing things instead of me doing things all the time? Sure.
I mean, I don't have a lot of these. I mean, if you're talking about me, I don't know. But there are lots of excellent little nature nugget type clips and things out there that are available. And I think, multimedia presentations like that are great. You can say, hey, today we're going to learn about this by by watching this little video clip that, you know, because there's great teachers out there who have put stuff on the internet and it's available. I actually use that kind of stuff all the time. You know, in my college classes, I know my wife uses it in 7th grade. You know, it's like, hey, we're going to talk about this. And this other person has already made this awesome video where they explain it really, really well. Let's watch that. Right.
I do that all the time because for me, I know rather than reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
If somebody already has a video, for example, I'm the leader of the primary Sabbath school class in our church, and we subscribe to Rich Aguilera. He does amazing videos of nature. And so every Sabbath, the kids look forward to it. We have 10 minutes of Rich Aguilera video every Sabbath. They know the format.
Yeah,
they look
predictability, right?
It's part of the structure for our Sabbath school class. So it saves us a lot of time, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it. We just plug it in. The kids love it and we learn from it. And then we discuss.
Yeah. Perfect. That'll work fine.
The 3AB and 4 Kids is a great resource too.
There are some good stuff there too.
With Ken Roger. I don't know if he's still here.
Nope.
And there's a guy that does science nugget on 3ABN.
Know exactly who it is. Yeah.
I forgot his
He
name.
does a lot of really great stuff. Yeah. Juliana, you have a question.
I think he has a science curriculum base for Sabbath school and Christian school.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that, but I believe you. I think Juliana is talking. I can't hear her.
I think I'm gone. What happened?
It shows you're unmuted, but it's not working. Sorry, Juliana. Want to type your question, Juliana? We can reply to it that way. That's okay. You could email it to me later if you need to. Be happy to respond to you that way as well. My email is up in the link. I would also encourage you, although this can be dangerous, to bring live animals whenever possible. I know it's terrible sometimes. I wasn't in charge of this nature nugget, but we had a friend who brought a sheep into the Sabbath school room, and it did what sheep do on the floor in the Sabbath school room, and it was awful. But I guarantee you the kids remember that nature nugget. You know, so if you can find just anything, you know, like just, you know, you have a friend who's got a snake, bring it in. You got a friend who's got some weird animal, bring it in. You got somebody who keeps turkeys or chickens, bring it in. You know, somebody's got a gerbil, bring it in. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. We can talk about it, you know, and it'll hook the students, right? That's all, this whole thing is, how can we hook them? How can we get them to remember this and be excited about it? Is that we have to show them how exciting it is, right? Because it is, and it's just really, really neat. So.
Thank you so much, Tim. We have 9 minutes that is supposed to be allotted in between presentations. And so again, thank you, Tim, for being with us. Carol is our next presenter, and members of this NAD2 track, you are welcome to stay here and wait until we get started again in 9 minutes. You can, you know, turn your camera off and go run around the house a few times, whatever you need to do. But
thank you.
Assuming you want to stay in the NAD2 track, then you don't need to do anything. Just we'll keep it running.
So everybody that wants.
Thank you, Tim. You enjoy
Thank
your
you, Tim.
presentation.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Happy Sabbath to all of you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
happy
Happy
Sabbath.
If you want to email me, I'll type my email in here again, and We can try that if you want. Oh, wait, I just did that to Carol. Hold on, let me try that again.
Got a little bit of a break. You have until 7:30 if you want to get up and walk around for a bit.
There, go to everybody. Try that again. So there it is. Good luck, Carol. I am going to leave you now and go home and have supper
Thanks,
with
Tim.
my little mammals.
God bless.
While you're waiting, Joyce, do we have to keep our camera on for the whole thing?
It would be much appreciated if you would keep your camera on during the different track sessions. During the general session, there's no need for you to keep your camera on during the general sessions. And
Okay.
if you don't particularly care about whether you are getting certification, then there's no need to keep your camera on in that case either.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Is the next section general?
The next one is praise and worship. And then the general session follows that.